there's a huge difference between a survival mindset and a sport mindset, because there's a difference between a survival situation and a sport situation. And often they're considered interchangeable. So someone who's considered to be a good fighter, for example, in a martial art, is considered to be a person who might be good at survival. And that's just not true. Those two things are not related. They're completely unrelated, in fact. So the reality is, if you're used to fighting in your own weight class, fighting in one direction, fighting without weapons, such as a sport fighter that fights in a cage fighters, or a boxer, for example, the training that you have is for fighting one person right in front of you in your weight class with a referee, with no weapons, and that is completely unrealistic for a real life survival scenario. In most survival scenarios where your life's actually in danger, you're going to be in a situation with someone who's larger than you. They're going to be trying to kill you, not defeat you. They're going to have a weapon, and there is going to be multiple aggressors in many cases. So not only are they outside your weight class, but they're also not obeying the rules of that fight system. So they're not just boxing, they're kicking, they're punching, they're biting, they're scratching, they're using a weapon, they're using environmental weapons, a brick, a bottle, something they find in the environment, a glass mug that could smash in the face with that. These are things that are commonly happening. So imagine, even if you're really good at fighting, but you don't know what to do for someone with a kitchen knife, now you've just gotten killed. And there are many stories of very professional fighters who've been killed in everyday situations involving knives and guns, and very common situations, baseball bats. Some individuals who are great fighters have even been beaten to death in bar fights. So that's an example of how the sport mindset and sport conditions don't match survival scenarios. And it starts with the mindset. And when a person's in a sport mindset, they're never thinking about killing the other person. They're never even having to decide, I would like to kill this person or not be killed by this person. That's not involved in a sport condition. So mentally, a person who's thinking about a sport and being a great fighter, they're never thinking about dying or being killed. And there's safeguards against it. Everything from a mouthpiece to rules about what you can and cannot do in the ring or in the cage, in case of a cage fighter. But none of those things are applicable to real life in a situation where you're at work, where you're walking on the street with your family, when you have no choice but to respond to a situation you did not choose to be involved in. And that is the number one difference between a survival situation and a sports situation. In a sports situation, you've agreed to the time, the location, the event, and the type of fighting you're going to be involved in. In a survival scenario, there are no agreements. You never agreed to fight. You never agreed to survive. You never agreed to do anything. You're simply responding to the fact that you're being attacked, which makes it completely unrelated to a sports scenario. So the primary difference is one has a consent related to it, and one has an actual exigent circumstance, and that's survival. Survival is exigent circumstance based, and self-defense is based upon life and death, whereas sport is based upon you deciding and agreeing to be in conflict with another person, which got your consent, which is completely unrelated to a survival situation.